Landmark Toastmasters, club number 4046, to become a better presenter in his role as a technical trainer at work. Starting with zero interest in leadership manuals or competing, he would eventually take on almost every one of the club leadership roles in 2 different clubs, compete in contests, and having a range of district level, and also he earned his DTM in 2006. Big, so let me finish. In 2011, he joined Big Brothers Big Sisters and found himself matching with a curious young mind who wanted to learn everything, which in turn inspired Chad to join Milwaukee Maker Space to begin collecting new skills. Wait, I'm not ready. In 2020, Chad created Maker Spaceship, a nonprofit company dedicated to inspiring the next generation of makers through hands-on, activity-driven events. In 2022, his former little brother joined the team. A part of this mission, Chad has come here today to talk about the maker mindset, what is, stop it. What is it, and how it can become a key component of the future. Please welcome distinguished Toastmaster Chad Lawson.
Well, it's been a long time since I started with, thank you, Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters. I don't see how to guess, but it has been a while since I said that. In the summer in which I turned 6.5, and of course, this thing doesn't like me now. There we go. Okay, we're good now. I did this, missing the early on. In the summer in which I turned 6.5, right? And when you're at that age, that half is important.
Yep.
But that was the year that I was diagnosed also with leukemia. Now, spoiler alert, survive. The next 2 years while going through chemotherapy, I would spend a lot of time, both inpatient and outpatient. This was well before smartphones and Game Boy, well, even Game Boys, but we had a couple of handheld, I don't want to date myself too badly. We had a couple of handheld electronic games, but nothing that was allowed to leave the house. So I spent a lot of time in a hospital bed staring at the ceiling. I knew exactly how many holes were in that ceiling, how many grids were in the lighting array. I just kept retreating more and more into my own head. And my dad, who was an electrical engineer with Illinois Bell at the time, he has since retired, would try to do anything to keep me present and grounded in the real world. He taught me the things that he knew. He taught me origami, the paper crane. He taught me electronics, so a lot of that stuff would sit idle in the back of my head for a few years. But the gifts that he gave me of constantly playing and tinkering and being present and being able to define myself as something other than just being a patient. Suddenly now, I was a guy who could build something. I could make things from my own mind and bring them into the real world. And it is that, even though it would be decades before I would hear the phrase maker and maker mindset, I know now that it was that gift that my father gave me that, and to a certain degree, probably saved my life. You're going to do this to me again, aren't you? You're going to keep making me click over there. There we go. No, that's the wrong button, my friend. There we go. So before I can talk about the idea of a maker mindset, let me take a step back and say, what is a maker? What does it mean to be a maker? Like any decent technology person, when I went to put this together, I wanted a slide with a nice, good definition. So I went to the internet.
Of course.
I went to the internet. I'm probably. Yeah, exactly. Don't, careful, it's probably a device you're listening.
That was, yeah.
Person or thing who makes something. General hint, don't search redundant on the internet either. You're gonna have a lot of fun with that. So it was a fairly useless definition. So when you think of maker, what do you think of? I mean, a lot of people will tell me, all right, they might think of Thomas Edison or Alexander Graham Bell, Ford, which I love hearing so many of those quotes among Toastmasters over the years. But I wanted to check I'm glad I got the owl following me. What do you think of? I saw a hand going up. What do you think of when you think of a maker?
I like to think of a maker as a person who makes things, especially out of things that others may throw away.
Cool. And then the phrase I hear is upcycling of that. As one word. But like what kind of things might a maker create? Any thoughts? What do you think of?
I think of a deal maker.
I do too.
That's an interesting one. That's a new one. I hadn't heard of that. I mean, obviously, my particular gift is electronics, but I saw a hand going up over here.
Something that you like to geek out.
Like to geek out.
It could be anything. It could be any kind of media, any kind of technology, sleuthing that's solve a problem, or it's just kind of fun to look at.
Ooh, I heard a phrase in there. We're like, solve a problem. We'll get back to that. Yes.
Create a system.
Pardon?
Create a system.
Create a system. I love the fact that I've got the analytical minds of Toastmasters here. Normally, when I ask this question, I get things like, oh, ceramics, or pottery. Fields involved. We're going big picture here, and I love it. But yes, the one definition that I've heard that I really liked was just somebody that takes something from their mind and makes it real. But I like this quote from Adam Savage of Mythbusters and Testing fame. That humans, and I'm going to paraphrase because I'm trying not to look over my slide, humans do two things better than other animals. We use tools and we tell stories. And as a maker, you're doing both. So now that we know what a maker is, we need to talk about what is a maker mindset. The modern, I'm going to put this down because it's useless, other than it's a fidget toy now, and you don't want to do that with an ADHD brain. So what is a maker mindset? In 2013, the father of the modern, and I emphasize modern maker movement, Dale Doherty, released an essay that appeared in a book called The Maker Mindset. And in it, he had dozens of concepts. It was paragraph after paragraph of what is this maker mindset. So much so that anyone who knows me, and there's plenty of familiar faces in the room, will know that even I couldn't talk about everything in 45 minutes. So instead, I'm going to focus today on the top 5 elements of a maker mindset, the ones that have been the most personal and resonated with me. First up is the concept of experimental play. Call it tinkering, call it just playing, but it's being willing to just pick something up and give it a try. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it's that willing to get your hands into it and do something. One of the stories that was mentioned in the introduction is the idea of building rockets. As one can tell, I do have a particular love for space. When I was a kid, I wanted to be an astronaut. It may not have happened yet, but it's always something I've wanted to do. Now, when I was growing up, my grandparents both lived in the same town, on the same street, about 2 blocks apart.
Wow.
It wasn't a coincidence. Once grandkids came along, they wanted to get a little bit closer together. But it meant that we never had to choose who we were going to visit at holidays. We would stay with one grandparent and it would cycle between all the various holidays, but we always got to see both sets of grandparents. Now, whenever we stayed at Grandma Lawson's house, which was not my favorite, except for the one closet. Just down the hall was where Grandma kept a ton of supplies. It would be like Quaker Oats cans, Pringles cans, styrofoam cups, paper, tissue paper, tracing paper, tons and tons of supplies, what other people might call like an arts and craft, but it was also, as was mentioned, upcycling, taking something that somebody else had discarded and put it away. Grandma kept all that stuff, knowing full well some grandkid was going to make something out of it. And almost every single time, inevitably, I would make a run. I mentioned I was born before the days of smartphones, which means that there aren't as many embarrassing pictures of me on the internet. It also means there aren't as many cute pictures, so this is a dramatic reenactment. But this is essentially what I would do. My grandmother thought of a deck of cards as the devil's fur book. You were not allowed to play card games in her house, but you could use them for crafts. So they would become the fins of my rocket. Luckily, we got rid of styrofoam cups, but in the old days, my more common nose cone was a styrofoam cup. It came perfectly, and I didn't have to resort to duct tape, but I'm an engineer. I love my duct tape. The next one I wanted to cover, this is a perfect tenet of the maker mindset. Being comfortable with the phrase, I don't know. It's a scary phrase. I mean, especially in the corporate world, you know, the more common phrase you hear is fake it till you make it. But being willing to just say, have the eyes, I love the head nods going for that one. But to be able to be vulnerable enough to say, I don't know, is an incredibly powerful tool. The minute you're willing to say, I don't know, is the opportunity to learn. I don't remember which quote I have coming up, so I'll share the other one after that. But my favorite story from this is I worked for a particular company. Let's call them a fruit-themed technology company. And I worked with them in a number of different roles, both in the corporate level and in the retail world. And in the retail world, as part of the training, in order to become a part of that fleet on the floor, the training included that you never, ever, ever gave an answer you weren't 100% sure of. If you didn't know that that was for an absolute fact that your answer was correct, the only acceptable answer was, I don't know, let's find out together, and walk them over to an information kiosk and get the right info. But the willingness to be able to say, I don't know, it was amazing how many times that put the other person at ease. Being willing to say, I don't know, requires incredible vulnerability, but it is the big, what was the line I heard? Because I know this isn't the slide. I don't know is the beginning of all wisdom or something. It's a great quote and I could not find an origin for it, so I don't want to put it in a slide. But if you are the smartest person in the room, you are in the wrong room. For a number of years, I worked for myself. Always in the wrong room. Next up is the concept of iterating. I heard somebody talk about the idea of evaluation, just going through it, but the other way you can think of this is just being willing to make mistakes. You don't have to. You're never going to start off being perfect. A simple quote is the idea of perfect is the enemy of done. Give it a try. Give it a shot, learn from it, and try again. I've got if you've seen the webcomic Awkward Yeti, then you'll recognize these figures. If you don't, this probably looks a little bit weird. So I'm gonna go just let this slide run. It's gonna go through all 6 panels. Keep an eye on the behavior, the way each of these 2 characters are reacting, starting from the same place, the same blob of, I don't know what I'm doing. They have very different approaches. It becomes easy to think that way. As somebody who spent 2 years in band, I will guarantee you that it does take practice to get better. If it's something you love, you're going to put in the effort. If it's not, you might look like our friend on the left. But the idea of iterating, doing it over and over again. So many people, if you ask on an average person, what does it take to build a car? You know, think about the process of inventing a car. Okay, well, there's the wheels, and then there's the body, and then no. It starts off with, now I get something that rolls. It's going to be way more primitive, and then building on it. It may take detours to now I got to learn something else. One of my favorite examples from the space program. How many things do we, in our average lives, do we have to learn just to figure out how to get to space? Teflon and Velcro, for example, were all just things we learned along the way while trying to figure out how to get to space. My next tenet, I started off writing as tolerate failure, but that's the wrong word. Get ready to embrace
Oh.
failure. Be good with it. Yeah, okay, and the good news is, I have a perfect example, one which everybody can relate to. Think about the first time you learned to ride a bike. You can't take it, first of all, how many people here know how to ride a bike?
Yes.
How many people could ride a bike perfectly the very first time they got on? I know, good, right? It's not, it's a rite of passage, but it's not an easy one, is it? Think about what that was like. For me, I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago. And we were in an unincorporated part of town, which meant we had no sidewalks. And my father did not believe in training wheels. Right? It was fly or fire. There was nothing in between, right? So started off getting on the bike, and I had three different options. The road, which I was not supposed to be playing in the road, so we weren't going to be riding on the road. The gravel driveway or the grass. Well, the grass was good for, it was, when you fell, it was a lot more comfortable, when, not if, right? When you fell, it was a lot more comfortable, but it required a lot more power and a lot more skill to actually ride on. The gravel driveway was a lot easier to pedal on, not as much fun to fall down on. This was also the day I learned parents lie. My dad was constantly saying, all right, I've got you, I'm holding on, I'm holding on. And the third time he would say that is the time the bike would wobble and I would fall over. And it was a day of falling over and falling over, sometimes under gravel, sometimes under grass. But one time there was that moment where dad got to that third, I got you, and the bike started to wobble. I was pedaling. I was on my own. Right? Thank you. And I was making my way down I think on that one, I was still on the grass, and I realized I'm heading straight toward the road. The road I'm not supposed to be on. And we haven't talked about stopping yet. Luckily, gravity took care of that pretty easily. But that day for me changed my world. Changed my world. It went from being only under the power of my own 2 feet. I could only go wherever I could walk. But now I had an entire set of new world open to me. I had a Dairy Queen I could now get to. I had a video arcade. Yes, I'm dating myself slightly. $8 movie theater and a Radio Shack I could get to. There were 3 new parks now in range. Several new friends and 1 or 2 places I wasn't supposed to go. But now I had a lot more control, and all because I was willing to fail over and over and over again. I picked up a skill that has stuck with me throughout my life. And I love this quote from the playwright Sam Beckett. Ever tried, ever failed, doesn't matter. Try again, fail again. Fail better. It's something I have written in several different places throughout my house and my different note-taking apps to remind me. And my last one of the aspects of being of a maker mindset is the concept of show and tell. I love that I'm saying this in this room. Normally I get to this point and I say, now I know not most people are not comfortable speaking in public. So when I was practicing this in this room, I got to this and just started laughing. I consider trying to keep a straight face and just go through that. But as makers, one of the key concepts is not just doing something, but then being willing to show other people and share that information. And the good news is YouTube is full of that. You go onto YouTube and you can see makers of every type. It doesn't have to be, I mentioned earlier, I love how everyone came up with more creative things to be as a maker, but whether it be ceramics or electronics or paint. For me, my world has always been in the small electronics world. So whatever your particular interest is, go onto YouTube and you'll find somebody who can help you out. But also there's an entire concept within learning theory. I can't come up with the exact word I'm looking for. Richard Feynman, the physicist, used to say that if you want to master something, teach it.
Mhm.
And I'm, again, talking to a room full of Toastmasters, I'm sure this doesn't come as a surprise, that you might know something, you might think you know it, but the minute you start showing it to somebody else, and you're like, oh, what's that word? That concept, it's right there. The minute you are able to explain it to somebody clearly and concisely, you've actually learned it. And it isn't until you try to teach it to somebody, you realize all the things you still don't know. And the other reason I put this as the last of my options is I wanted to talk about going back to that earlier idea of I don't know and vulnerability. There's a webcomic, I love webcomics, called XKCD. Very nerdy comic done by a mathematician and computer scientist, stick figures for all the things, but he breaks down very bizarre social concepts in terms of clear math. And he said that he doesn't like when somebody says, I don't know something, some piece of common knowledge that everyone knows. He never makes fun of them for it, because he's then depriving himself of the opportunity to share something, but also making them feel less. Instead, what he's done is he looked at the math of it and figured out that for every single thing that everybody knows that. On average, there are 10,000 people in the world learning that for the first time every single day. So instead of saying, you've never heard of Mentos and Diet Coke? It says, you never heard of Mentos and Diet Coke? Come on, we're going to the store. Why? You're one of today's lucky 10,000. And changing that mindset of dismissiveness. We talked at the beginning about being vulnerable enough to say, I don't know. Make sure it's be that person that for somebody else, to give somebody that opportunity to be vulnerable enough to say, I don't know. They get to learn, you get to learn as you teach them. And what I love is that I'm pretty sure from watching faces that, all right, this sounds like a great idea. So I don't know how much time I'm going to need to spend on this. And I turned off my watch, so I didn't see how I'm doing. By the way, 7 years later, I'm still after getting my DTM, I'm still terrified of the clock.
20 minutes.
All right then. So why would you want to go through? Why would you want to make yourself vulnerable like that? Why would you want to take all this particular effort? Well, number one, it's good for you and your brain. One of the key concepts, a lot of what you see in the maker mindset world shows up in psychologist Carol Dweck's growth mindset. And she, being a psychologist, she has a ton of information showing that embracing a continual learning mindset, being willing to keep learning new things, trying new things, can help stave off dementia and Alzheimer's, or at least the effects thereof. And as somebody who has seen that happening in my family, that's an important thing to me. So it can not only help keep your mind alert, but it can also keep you going for much, much longer. But the other one I wanted to show, there it is. Being a maker, better than being a consumer. There's a joke among a lot of my friends that, why buy something when you can spend 600 hours and 3 times the price building it yourself?
Yes.
And it's true. I have so many things right now, and my wife and I just moved about a year ago. And part of it is we have taken to doing some things ourselves. We had a budget for doing stuff like the fencing for 3 dogs. Fencing we're gonna let professionals do. But it's like, all right, little bits of electrical wiring, I can do that. And no, before anybody asks, that's not why my hair is like that. My wife has picked up some new skills as we're continuing to make this house our own. But in the process of moving, we had to move everything within my makerspace to the new house. And it's just boxes of, I never finished that, did I? This is still, I have more projects in progress than there are grains of sand. No, that's not. But there's a lot to be said for being willing to, instead of continuing the world of consumption, when you build something, not only do you know how it works, not only do you know how to use it, you know how it works. It can help you repair it. Being willing to, I love the camp that is out there for kids to take apart stuff like dryers and washing machines, even if you have no idea how it works, beginning the process of discovering and saying, oh, that's what it looks like inside. It's no longer a black box. It's an opportunity for discovery. The other reason I left it in this particular phrasing is there is money to be made as a maker. I mean, all you have to do is take a look at Etsy and see the number of people that are creating things. You search laser cut is a fine example. And it doesn't, if you want to be a full-on professional maker, and someday I will, it's an entire pitch of sponsorships and whatnot. But if you're just looking to have a little additional money, maybe it could be a fun way to do it. My mother has been, my entire life has been doing a lot of sewing and more specifically quilt type crafts. Her name is Kay, so I had for a while the domain name Kay's Quilt Crafts. I don't believe that domain name still exists, but it was fun to put out there. But her goal wasn't to make a ton of money selling the stuff. It was to make a little bit of money to pay for the next set of stuff and get that out of the house. So my wife wishes I would take that particular. Like, I still got the room. Why should I get rid of anything? The other one, I'm leaving this in this particular phrase. I keep looking for a better way to say this. But I think this is actually one of the more important things. I know I mentioned it to me, it's deeply personal to keep my mind alert for fear of dementia. But this one ties back to what I said about being in the hospital. When you spend that much time in the hospital, or quite frankly, being a kid, you're not in control. Being in the hospital was every 5 minutes waiting for the next person to come in and take me off to a blood draw, a spinal tap, one test for another. It was the process of being able to create and build, allowing me to find myself as something other than a patient. I was a maker. It gave me a chance to be able to be in control. And considering in today's day and age, control is something that is deeply lacking at times. Carving out a little point in your life to be able to say, this is something I control, this is something I do, and I define. So if I've convinced you, and I love the nods I've been getting so far, so I think I'm on the right track. How does one make that happen? Well, the first thing is I need for you to accept one simple truth. You probably already know. I saw everybody's hands go up with the bike riding. I saw everybody nodding at various times that I mentioned different projects. Everyone in this room has seemed to be on board with something I said. So you probably already are a maker, but if you're wanting to take this to the next level and really drive it home, my first suggestion to you is pick a project. If you just want to say, I recently went through at my local makerspace, the class on how to use the wood shop. You have to be signed off on a set of power tools before you're allowed to use them on your own. I went through the class and then the instructor said, what are you planning on making? I don't know, I just wanted to learn how to do woodcraft. You're never going to do it. If your goal is just simply to learn woodcraft, you're going to, like our friend with the clay, you just sit and stare at it. If you have a purpose behind it, then you have a direction to go. For woodshop, by the way, the gentleman suggested making a cutting board. He said that I had no interest in making a cutting board. It seems to be the thing every woodcrafter does. Etsy is full of little cutting boards. Why make a cutting board? Well, it turns out he gave me the answer. To make a cutting board requires almost every single tool within the wood shop. And it requires dozens of little techniques to master and perfect along the way. That one, you're saying this stupid little thing is an incredibly powerful tool. Now, years ago, I had a young man, a fellow Toastmaster, ask me to mentor him in electronics. He wanted to learn how to build things, how to program things, and I thought, okay, this will be a great opportunity for me to reiterate what I want to know. What do you want to make? I don't know, I just want to learn it all. I pressed him, we decided to come up with a project. We decided to make, like a Jedi making his own lightsaber, a Toastmaster timing cube. Our time just use the little card, a stopwatch. What if we made our own timer? And it would have on the side all the standard times. We had to, in the process of building this, we had to figure out how is somebody going to use it. Were we gonna put the lights on the front or on the top? Were we gonna put the display so that you can look at it from the top or from the side? We had to make dozens of decisions, including what particular type of board went inside. Were we gonna use one light that could change colors, or 3 different colors that you could see not just the color, but the position of it from across the room? We made dozens of decisions, and quite frankly, we learned a lot of what we didn't know before we could figure out what we needed to know. Did that, yeah, I think you knew what I meant by that. There were more things we learned we didn't know than we needed to learn. So it was a constant learning process. And yeah, Ed and I were talking earlier that it's nice to see this thing still exists. I brought it up the other day and went, there's no way this still works. Hey, look, it does. And as I joked earlier, in Toastmasters, the number of times I've come close to or been disqualified for time, this thing is both my my first love and my mortal enemy. And the last of the particular skills I want to give you is a magic word. If you may have seen this teased in the description for this program as one word to help you unlock everything. Ready to know what the magic word is?
Yes.
One magic word. Yet. Doesn't sound that great on its own. I mentioned Carol Dweck earlier. She considers this to be the magic word to unlocking a growth mindset. Let me show you how you might use that. Instead of a closing, shutting down sentence like, I'm not good at that. Just by adding that one word, I'm not good at that yet. You've begun to open up possibility. Another good example, I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to do that yet. It changes the conversation from it's done, it's over, it can't be changed, to infinite possibility. I said earlier, I love rockets. I always wanted to be an astronaut, and I'm not an astronaut yet. It may never happen, but I assure you, I'm not closing the door on that possibility. I have one more story I want to tell you to tie a lot of this together. But before I get to there, I want to check in because everyone's been so patient and attentive, and my green card just went out. I know there in the program is a QR code to give a Toastmasters survey, but I wonder if you wouldn't mind doing me a favor and taking a picture of this. This will take you to a quick little evaluation form I have through a service I started paying for. But at the end of it, the reason I'm concerned about it is at the end of it, it will take you to a link. That link, and by the way, you can uncheck the box if you don't ever want to see an email from me and my company ever again, that's fine. I want you to get to the link. The link will take you to Maker Spaceship website. There will be a place where you can download a PDF and watch a video. You've seen throughout all of my slides, my little paper rocket friend here. That video will teach you how to make the rocket. Now you can do it with any particular sheet of paper. The PDF that I have on there has a particular pattern to make things a little bit easier. The way the pattern is designed was that if you fold this correctly, you'll see where the color and the white line up. And the video is done by myself and my former little brother. When we met, he was 11, he is now 22, and yes, that freaks me out on a daily basis. He's gone from being the young kid that thought he knew everything and was a bit of a smart aleck and made fun of my age, to being my partner. We now refer to Maker Spaceship as a non-related father-son business. I still see a couple cameras up, so I'll leave that up for a little bit longer. And while I'm doing that, did anybody have any particular questions for me?
There was a question online. They want
Oh,
to see
please.
your shirt. So if you could just stand by the camera so they can see the front of your shirt.
It's an unfortunate company name. It's HARDaddy.com is where I got the shirt. It was from watching way too many maker videos. This shirt in particular kept showing up in the advertisements. Yes.
Is this session being recorded? Will we get a replay?
That's an excellent question, and I don't know the answer. If somebody-
The session is being recorded. It'll be available at some time in the future.
Thank you for asking that. That's a good question for me too.
Sometime, I don't know, but it'll be at least a month after this event ends.
Also, I do have, it's not on the slide. My email address is chad@makerspaceship.org. If you come up with any questions or anything you want to talk about, please throw me an email. As you can tell, I love talking. Yes.
Might there be any maker spaces you go to?
I'm glad you, yes, I started putting together a list on the makerspaceship.org website. I recently had to take down the page because I found out a number of those resources had changed. It will go back. I will commit. Before I make a promise, especially because it's being recorded. Before I make a promise, let me see if I can do this. Well, all right, send me an email, and I will. And let me know where you live, and I can point out makerspace in your area. Where's home for you again? I know you told us.
St. Francis.
That's right.
I'm looking
You're
for
being
a
smart
plug.
aleck.
I'm looking for a plug.
Okay. If you live in the Milwaukee area, there's Milwaukee Makerspace, a community makerspace with over 300 members and 2 active locations. including
Thank you.
St. Francis. We ran into each other at the makerspace. So if you live in Madison, there are 2. There is the Bodgery and Bodgery, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. And thank you. And Sector 67 in Fond du Lac area. The Fond du Lac Public Library has, I think it's called the Idea Space or the Idea Lab, something to that effect. It's an amazing public makerspace. Yeah, I will try to put that page back up with a number of different things. Yes.
Just so people know, there are maker fairs.
Yes.
Yay.
Also, and thank you. All right. Also going to be on that resource list, and I don't know how that slide didn't appear, but yes, when Dale Doherty created it was the father of the maker, modern maker movement. The maker fairs were created almost every given weekend. Somewhere in the world is a maker fair where makers from the area will come together and show off what they've been working on, and more importantly, tell you what they went through. What did they have to learn? What went wrong? There's one here in Elkhorn that just happened a couple of months ago. I was there. It's like this. But yeah, please search for Maker Fair. It's known as the greatest show and tell on earth. You had a follow up with this.
Well, it's just fantastic. I mean, the one thing that I see in Milwaukee is this thing that looks like a Batmobile coach or something like that. It's got wings and stuff. It just.
Oh, I know the one
things
you're
that make, and there are blacksmith who make incredible things, and a lot of show and tell. Booths of inventors that have been in America who are African American. It's just, it just lends itself to so much stuff, and it's usually cheap.
Yeah, and a lot of the makers, there are some that sell wares, but mostly it's about showing off. If you want to learn how to build an R2D2 unit, there's at least a dozen people that can do that. I do want to be mindful of time. Yeah, if you have any other questions, by all means, shoot me a note. But yeah, search for Maker Fair. The Milwaukee Maker Fair is always in the fall, but there's, like I said, the Elkhorn one just passed. That was their 5th year, I believe, 6th year. Actually, I'll go ahead and leave this up as I do my last little story. Toward the end of my junior year in high school, I think it was about 6 weeks away from the end of the junior year, I had what could best be described as a mental breakdown. Seemed like everything in my life was going wrong. I was having constant pains in my hands and feet, migraines on a nearly daily basis. Every single sphere of my life, from church to school to home, every place there was chaos, and I didn't have any place that I felt comfortable. Like I said, I had what could only be described as a mental breakdown, and I tried to kill myself. Now, spoiler alert, survive. And believe me when I say I'm not trying to make light of that. But after that incident, I would spend 6 weeks in an adolescent psychiatric hospital. In addition to all of the usual tests and batteries they put everybody through, I was given an IQ test. That was cool. Puzzles to solve, a lot of different ways of looking at things. And when it came time to get that information, I didn't want it. My doctor asked why. Right now, everything's absolutely crazy in my world. Right now, the only thing I have going for myself is that I consider myself to be a really smart person. You know, I was in the gifted and talented program in grade school, so, you know, I could be the fastest runner in the world until somebody pulls out a stopwatch. So I don't want to know because, and before I can even finish the sentence, he told me the number. It wasn't the number I wanted. Really, it wasn't even close. You think about a standard bell curve, I was smack dab in the middle. Not a bad place to be, but when your entire personal identity is based around the idea of being super smart and finding out you're perfectly normal, it's one of the few times I've never wanted to be normal. But I say that not because. I say that because it's amazing the number of times that I show off something like this. And somebody says, well, that's easy for you. You're clearly really smart. Clearly, you're some kind of genius. This is easy for you. How could I possibly get started like that when you're obviously smarter than I am? The number of times I hear that, every time I hear that, I cringe. Because I know it's not true. I have the numbers to prove it. So I'm not smart or smarter in any way, shape, or form, then how is it I'm able to do all this stuff? Well, it's the same 5 principles that I've been clinging to my entire life since I started holding origami cranes in the hospital. I'm willing to say I don't know. I'm willing to take risks. I'm willing to make mistakes. That maker mindset, even if I didn't have a name for it, has arguably and without hyperbole, literally saved my life twice. And so I'm hoping by sharing this, not only does it help me learn it a little bit more, but I'm hoping by sharing it with you, if you're willing to embrace a maker mindset, I'm hoping it can be the key to unlocking your potential. And
You and a gift from District 35 to thank you for coming and presenting such great topic.